All right, so we just went over some very common BAH scams, right? What are some other things that people do in the military that you've seen that they're getting caught for and getting into some serious trouble with?
Another common way is these marriages by proxy, what we see. And what you'll see a service member do is they'll go online and they'll go to, there's these sites that can link you up with women, whether they're, oftentimes it's Eastern Europe, Philippines, Southeast Asia, all over the world. And they'll link these service members up and they'll do these marriages by proxy. And so you have a service member who's never met this girl or never met this guy. Typically it's a male service member and a female. They've never met them. They probably never intend on meeting them. They may have chatted with them a couple different times, but they'll marry them in order to get housing allowance. There's services out there that do this, and I've seen this multiple times. And so these service members will get married, and let's say they get married somewhere in the Eastern Bloc. They'll have this marriage decree in the Eastern Bloc of Europe, and it'll get validated, and they'll turn this in. By validated, they'll mean they'll provide, there's services out there that will validate these in the United States, because they're, I guess, technically legal marriage, depending on what state you're in and how, if you have to consummate the marriage and so on. But the guy at IPAC or the guy at S1 has no clue. And so you'll turn in this marriage certificate. You'll be married. Now you're married on paper. Your spouse is somewhere in Eastern Europe or somewhere in Southeast Asia. You've never met them. You have no intent on meeting them. They have no intention of ever coming over here. And now you're just claiming BAH. And what's happening then is you're either getting OHA, which is Overseas Housing Allowance, for the location that they're at, which is, if they're in a certain country, if your spouse is in a foreign country, you may be entitled to not basic allowance for housing, but it's called OHA, Overseas Housing Allowance, for where your spouse is, whatever country or city that they're located at. Or you can or a lot of service members take it to the next level. And of course, where do they claim? They claim New York City. It's like they bring them to New York City and they've never been here in their life. And I've had several of those recently where you have a service member claiming a spouse who's foreign. They say they came to New York City and they're living the life on, in the village somewhere. And meanwhile, they're back on the Eastern Bloc, have never intended on coming to America. They probably would have a very difficult time getting to America, right? And so that is another common scheme. And that one's easy. Then that oftentimes sends red flags up to DFAS. That's easy to audit. That's almost an automatic red flag on that. And then they'll get audited. And then it's pretty easy for NCIS CID to pull checks to see if that individual's ever even stepped in America, because every time you come to the country, there's a record of that. And they can tell very easily that this individual's never even been in the country. And meanwhile, you're claiming San Francisco, Miami, New York, Hawaii, BAH. So that is another very common scheme that's out there. And that rarely ever works. But, hey, people do it. If you're involved in BAH fraud, you need to call my office immediately and do a consultation. You can reach us at area code 813-669-3500. Please get on my calendar. We'll schedule a full evaluation of your case. It will be in complete confidence, and we'll come up with a plan for how to deal with your situation.